instead of being able to keep an eye out for your own safety, and pretending that if your neighbor looks like someone you see in a police report about stabbing their 8-year-old, what am I trying to say? They try so hard to make it seem like non-existent or a very rare crime. And I guess it's only when you have a neighbor across the hall who murdered their own 3-year-old. Like, beat them to death. Burst their spleen open with a hard object. Actually, I read about it when I Googled her name. What did I just say? I meant I Googled her name when she scared me. And then when I read about it, when I Googled it, like I found a newspaper clipping. It was like, holy shit. But it was also involving her boyfriend, so it was probably like he did it, but she didn't say anything. Although the way she talked, I wouldn't, I wasn't there. But kid's dead. Brutally beaten to death. And these people 20 years later are still threatening someone like myself who is, like, it drove them crazy when they couldn't get under my skin. Like, very subtly. And if I, the more blasé, what would I say? Like, la-di-da. The more la-di-da I was. So you don't realize until you have daily doses of it. You know, for me, it took years. Because it's like, why? Like, why would someone want to hate someone for no reason? And I mean, I'm looking at a building full of black people thinking that, because I never hated black people. Because I never lived with black people, maybe. And I could speculate till the cows come home, and in a free country with free speech, I'm allowed to come close to putting my foot in my mouth. But the point is, if you have neighbors that stab 8-year-olds, where did I just see that? For the stabbing of her 8-year-old son, the summer of 2020. Like, it's more important that we talk about taking down the Jefferson Memorial than learning that you're living in times where your neighbors today might, you're not used to your neighbors killing their own children, but in certain communities it's very common for whatever reason. I sound like I'm judging with my la-di-da voice, my obnoxious voice, but that's because I've been traumatized by it. And it takes another few years to realize why you can't explain it to anyone. And when you do, you just sound like a crazy person. You start talking fast, trying to say as much as possible in as short a time as possible, as you can tell the person wants to get away from you, as rapidly as possible. And then you say something like, what was your name again? When you had a whole conversation about the origins of that name. And then, I guess that's the damage. Like, it does take a toll. And, anyway, the point of all this was that our news, more than ever for the past 5 years, certainly for the past 3 years, has gone out of its way to keep the conversation filled with soup kitchens and, Black Panther Cafe, let's call it. Every day there's another religion or another church that wants to feed people because, if they don't have a service to sell directly, they're selling something. So our news is just basically co-opted by people paying the bills and hoping that they're oblivious to the cost of being so shallow and being so, what's worse than shallow, just losing honor, you know, and not being trusted. I mean, I don't even know how people trust each other today, unless, you know, that's why family is so important. It's the closest thing you can come to to actually knowing firsthand someone's history. And it's not about judgment. If you have a stranger, no matter what they look like, coming to you for whatever, you don't know them. It's natural and healthy to be wary, you know, in these times for sure. And then dream about a day when it wasn't like that. And then ask yourself, why are we throwing it all away? Why? Because Thomas Jefferson was such a bad man. Did they take down Washington Memorial Day? What was Bobby Kennedy saying in his podcast with Scott Ritter yesterday? That people all over the world, people in Africa, used to name their kids. I think he even said in Mexico. You know, some languages more different than others, naming their kids Kennedy, naming them Washington, naming them Jefferson, because everybody recognized the authentic worthiness for respect. And then it got thrown away because people are dangerous, no matter what color. And the more and more dangerous people who populate make life kind of sucky. Ask Bob Lee.